Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Purnima Neelakandan, and I'm a senior consultant at Neudesic. Thanks for joining today's presentation on the end of InfoPath, discover better ways to build forms and workflows in SharePoint. Before we get started, a little bit about myself. I'm a senior consultant here at Neudesic, and I'm also an Nintex VTE, located in the Philadelphia region, focused on providing solutions to automate business processes end-to-end and integrating with line of business applications for our customers. I've done extensive work using Nintex Workflow product suite, and I've used it to drive life sciences solutions for about 7 years now, particularly around clinical trials and document management systems. Being the Nintex VT, I work very closely with the product team and provide user experience and customer input for. A little bit about Neudesic. Neudesic is a national services provider with 17 offices here in the US, with the headquarters being in Irvine, Southern California. Additionally, we also have 2 global offices located in India with about 500 consultants nationally focused on a number of different initiatives. We offer technology services with our expertise in portals and collaboration, CRM, BI, connected systems, and CAD, and also mobility. You can reach me at the email address purnima.neelakandan@neudesic.com. You can also get hold of me in Twitter at ppn494. There's a lot of content we are looking to cover today. So please be patient. There's a lot of good information in the webinar. If you're not able to be till the end of the webinar, I encourage you to watch the presentation, a recorded presentation on our website. There is a Q&A session in the end. You can ask your questions throughout the webinar presentation in the chat window. Here's the agenda for today. We're going to touch base on InfoPath and its future, some of the challenges faced today in business process automation in general, and also since InfoPath is going away, we will briefly discuss on the alternatives and focus on Nintex, how it compares with InfoPath, followed by a quick demo and benefits of using Nintex form today and a couple of case studies in the real world scenario, and we'll wrap the session with Q&A. So feel free to ask questions during the session using the chat box, and we'll get to them in the end. We will not be answering questions during the webinar itself. Okay, so what is InfoPath? Most of the callers know what InfoPath is. I'm just going to touch base for people who weren't aware of it or have not used it in the past. Microsoft InfoPath is similar to a structured document like Word, Excel, or other MS client-side applications that stores data in XML format in the backend, which was responsible for its wide popularity. It usually connects with different line of business systems using some custom code or complex workflow logic. So back in 2003, when it was first introduced, it was used as a filler form that can be filled out and uploaded to a document library. Because of its adoption, Microsoft made it available via browser using InfoPath Form services hosted in SharePoint Server. InfoPath integrated with SharePoint and can also be attached to workflows to run business processes. How long will InfoPath be available in the future? So Microsoft came out with a press release past May that no new version of InfoPath will be shipped with SharePoint 2016, which is the next version of SharePoint, and its current release will be the last release. So InfoPath is nearing the end of its life cycle, and Microsoft has provided a time frame for ending its support. So if you have been using InfoPath extensively, there's no need to panic. The support will be continued until 2023, but this is also a great time to take a look at your form strategy. So moving on, I just want to spend a couple minutes on the slide to talk about why InfoPath is gone. It sets the stage for a conversation about Nintex. So if you look at the figure on the right, you can see the Cisco's prediction in April 2011. It's a little outdated. It was released in 2011, but it still holds true in terms of its future prediction. So what does Cisco say? It predicts that there will be 25 billion devices connected to the internet by 2015, and there will be 50 billion by 2020. What this means is there will be more number of devices than people by 2020. It also tells on the graph that every user will have about 7 devices which is connected to the internet. So it becomes more and more important to provide solutions that work on different platforms and devices. Having said that, there are several reasons why InfoPath is gone, but primarily the first one being the lack of mobile support. Providing mobile access to a farm solution was cumbersome, and InfoPath got stuck where it was and used to be, and the web market moved away. If you have been an avid InfoPath user, you would also know about the thick client interface that has to be installed on the desktop, and also how important it is to understand the SharePoint do's and don'ts to work with it. Lack of portability to different environments. So there's no good way to package a solution, and deployment was extremely difficult. The user has to keep a copy of different templates for dev and production environments. Data connections have to be published for different environments. Deploying or making forms available through a browser was difficult. Although InfoPath Form Services provides the HTML data for a user, it wasn't easy for the person working with the form and publishing it to deploy it using one. And InfoPath forms were built to hold data, process, and everything else, resulting in complex forms that were hard to maintain and reuse. So what I mean by that, if you have used InfoPath form for developing forms in SharePoint, we know that it connects to data by being connected to the data source. So InfoPath provides presentation layer, and the coupling between the user interface and the data underneath it became so important for it to work on the browser. So the data can live anywhere. It was really good in view and edit scenarios, but the data could not be changed without having to modify the form. So you can change a data source. Yes, you can, but the form has to be updated and published again. And you cannot change the data type of a data source without having to affect the form. So does that mean that InfoPath was not capable of building forms using the three-tier architecture or software model? No. InfoPath is capable of doing or having data process and UI separate, but it was not used in that way. Very few people that I know used InfoPath and its capability. However, because we always think about forms first and then we add process on top of the form, we started developing standalone application form. The bad part of InfoPath is it did not discourage you to develop forms without processes and data, and that became a primary reason why InfoPath has to be taken down, because now you're just overloading the form interface, and it does more things than it could really do, and all of a sudden it brought the whole environment down. So what are the challenges users face today in business process automation? Like I said before, we started building standalone forms, the forms that hold data, business processes, and everything else. The result being really complex forms that were hard to manage or migrate. Logic is either hidden or disconnected. So it was easier to build forms by dragging and dropping custom actions, but then we also built custom views and custom events and custom rules that were triggered based on these events. So even for the person who developed the form, it became very difficult to understand after it was developed. So now you have a heavily loaded form which is more complex than a code-based solution. No inbuilt security. What I mean by that is the form has to be modified, and different sections have to be built, and security has to be micromanaged. It does not work tightly with SharePoint security itself. So it's not item level security, but it was form level security. And what because of this, it was possible to go and see the form data in the backend. It's also possible to modify the data in the backend and break the security. So it was not structurally built in it, which was one of the most common problems that users face with today. Complexity without code. So InfoPath is a no-code solution, but that didn't stop it from being complex. So having talked about the challenges faced by users today in business process automation, what are the alternatives for InfoPath? InfoPath used to work really well with SharePoint. It's a beast in itself, but if we are going to replace InfoPath, what other solutions can I look at? Okay, good old ASP.NET Forms built using Visual Studio. We can always go back to our programming basics. The forms can be built and hosted in SharePoint. These are called ASPX forms. The problem with it is the forms are expensive, and we need a lot of manpower to develop and maintain. And over a period of time, developers became bottleneck. Users have to wait in line to even build the simplest forms. Not to mention they became hard to maintain. So you're basically building a product to support your business process. You can also develop a basic Excel online services form in SharePoint. I'm not going to go into detail about this, but then these are very simple forms and are not useful for a lot of use cases that we're seeing in the industry today. And we can also use third-party tools that work really well with SharePoint, some of them being Nintex and K2. But before I move on, I want to quickly mention the difference between Nintex versus K2. So K2 uses separate hardware workflow manager, whereas Nintex makes use of the SharePoint workflow engine, which is very powerful and underutilized, thereby reducing the extra hardware costs. Okay. So why Nintex forms? Is it a substitute for InfoPath? Because we all know InfoPath had a number of problems to move away from it. So the blunt answer is no. The real answer is that we are focused on a use case, not exactly the same as InfoPath. InfoPath meant to do different things. There was no structure around it. People could do all things using it. So at Nintex, we are rethinking the problem. So the goal was not to recreate InfoPath, but to create the best possible form solution to be able to adapt to changing business process. What problems Nintex workflow solution address? Nintex thinks of a form solution as a business process solution end to end. So the presentation layer is decoupled from the data layer. So we are going back to our three-tier architecture, which is proven and works really well in a very complex business scenario. The form has data packaged for the user to look at in a certain way. And the workflow parses the form and put it in storage in a way to make more sense. So what this means is we have different forms at different steps of a workflow instead of building one giant form and manipulating it for every step in the process. So Nintex splits the solution into a three-tier architecture. So how Nintex does it? If you look into the slide, we have people, process, and content working very closely to accomplish a business process. The presentation logic is where the forms should live, and the users interact with the form. The form gives the user information that they need and also get information from the users. Now, the users present data to the process logic in the middle. So that's where the thinking gets done, the business process executes and goes through steps in execution. And in the end, we have the content or the data tier uh, where we read information from or we write information to. So you can see that SharePoint is one piece within the diagram, within the content layer here, which means because of this three-layer architecture, the content can reside anywhere. Now you can integrate with Box, you can integrate with Yammer, you can have your data in SAP, etc. It doesn't matter. But then Nintex would allow you to pull information from anywhere using out-of-the-box form and workflow action. So why this is good? The odds of something changing is quite high. So no application change is stable for a certain period of time. For example, you can change the branding without having to change the process or data that resides in someplace else. You can move the data from SharePoint to SQL without changing the form. You can update the process, or you can add and remove steps within your workflow logic. And people that work within data don't have to worry about the presentation layer at all. It is the workflow's responsibility to send data to the right places. So this makes the workflow simpler, the form stays simple, and data can live anywhere, and it's also easier to secure because the form, the Nintex form and workflow process locks the entire item, but not the form itself. Here's a quick snapshot of what a form shouldn't do and what does Nintex do to alleviate the problem that's faced today. You can see on the figure on the left, there's one form which is connected to data, which is connected to business process, and also custom rules running in the back end. You can see that it's being accessed by all the three layers simultaneously, and there's a lot of confusion and micromanaging of permissions within the form. On the other end, if you see at the form that is built using Nintex, you can see how different section within your business process is being used by different sections within the form. So you basically create multiple forms very easily to support the various needs of your business process. So who can build Nintex forms, right? We have to touch base on the Gartner study that happened recently on how often business processes change. So Gartner came up with this statistics. 2/3 of business process change every 6 months. Yep, which is okay. But look at this, 18% change every month, and at least 1 in 10 business processes change every week, and 4% change every day. So keep in mind, 1 out of 10 companies change their process every week. How do you keep up? So the best answer is to design workflow for everyone. You need a product that works for everyone. Everyone as in a business analyst. There's a little something for a business analyst, a little something for developer, a little something for IT persons. Everybody can work together and make sure the process is automated and flows quickly end to end. Nintex allows you to do that because of their enriched workflow actions, and it can also be extended and customized if you need to add complex workflow solutions. Having talked about Nintex and its advantages, I want to quickly show a demo to talk about the forms interface and how it tightly integrates with the workflow in SharePoint. So let's move on to the demo. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to auto-generate a basic form using the Nintex form solution and publish it to mobile and cloud in 2 clicks. So what I have set up here is a SharePoint custom list with some out-of-the-box site list columns. So I'll go into list settings to show you the columns that I have. So there is a title field, description, multiple line of text, estimated cost in currency, approved by, approved date, and status. So this list will contain pre-authorization travel expenses created by user, which will be sent to the cost estimator for input and then to the final approver. Once the request is approved or denied, the status of the item itself will be updated on the list. So to generate the form, I open up the list menu and click on Nintex Forms. It opens up the browser enabled form designer and also generates a default out of the box form template for use. You can see how all the list columns show up in the form in the same order they were created. Now you can customize this layout as you would like. Obviously the Nintex Forms logo can be removed and updated to suit your organization color code and theme, and also you can also update with your organization's logo. We have basic CSS and CSS and font scheme provided by Nintex, but everything else is customizable. I'm not going to show how to customize the CSS and logo in this demo. We'll just talk through the most important use case here, how to publish the form and customize it for different processes in the workflow. So the first step, the user fills out the title and description, so we need both those fields enabled for the initiator. And estimated cost, approved by, approved date don't have to be filled in. So I'm going to make those fields disabled or read only. I want them to be visible, but I don't want them to be enabled. I don't want to add any attachments. I just delete it. Also, I need to make a demarcation. The user know that these fields don't have to be filled in. Okay, so we have the basic form customized. So how would you publish this for different layouts? At the top you can see options available for different screen layouts. So we have the desktop enabled by default, and I'm going to want to publish this for iPhone and iPad. So let me click on iPhone view. You see how the form layout is customized to suit an iPhone device. Now let me preview this. This will be the look and feel of the form on your mobile phone, and this can be customized. If you think this form is too long, I can always go and modify the fields and make them fit my device layout. It's really easy, it's just drag and drop. I also want to publish it to an iPad, so let me select iPad. This will be the default iPad layout. So you can see iPhone and iPad are the two options selected here. So when you go into publish, you can see the layouts included. The default one is desktop, and you also include iPhone and iPad. Now, publish to Nintex Live is the option to publish it to the cloud outside of your organization's firewall, so users can contribute to your business process even if they don't belong to your company's network. I don't need this form to be published on the cloud, but I just want to show you what would happen if I were to click on publish to Nintex Live. Yes, I need a short URL to be sent to the external user so they can fill out this form, And let me allow anonymous access. If this was disabled, you have to provide the users outside of your network the email ID so that they get a link sent and they can fill out the form. So I'm going to allow anonymous access for now and save this option. And then click publish. Okay, so your form has been successfully published. You note this URL. I'm going to send this out